Mm. Hello, 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 everyone. We are waiting for Emily to get in the chat. We're going to be talking about all things men's mental health. So any men's mental health questions that you have, please put them in the chat below. But Emily is a psychologist. She answers all things on narcissism, trauma bond. So if you are someone who constantly finds themselves in a toxic relationship, repeating the same negative patterns, Emily is going to be talking about that, especially at the Year of the Man Summit, which is next weekend. She's going to be on the panel answering rapid fire questions. So hey guys, thank you so much for joining. We're just waiting for Emily to come on in. And join us as well. So any questions that you have for men's mental health, put them down below. I will answer them while we wait for her. But let me know how you guys are doing tonight. Okay, someone from Springfield, someone from Singapore. I was just in Singapore. I loved it. Thank you. I love my sweatshirt too. I usually don't wear sweatshirts because I live in Florida. But yeah, I do love me this sweatshirt. You're doing a great job on men, mental health issues with New Woke World. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I appreciate that, guys. I have a question. I always find myself going silent when in confrontation with my significant other. Well, what happens when you go silent during confrontation is you're experiencing your response within fight or flight. There's actually fight, flight, fawn. And there's one other one that basically means like you do what the other person wants and needs you to do. And that's what you've learned to adapt in order to survive during confrontation. So for you, it sounds like what you grew up with was your voice being silenced. Like you weren't allowed to get your opinion in. You weren't allowed to speak out. Maybe you had harsh rules growing up, strict parents. And so whenever somebody brings up something that they don't like to you, they will, it causes you to go into that fight or flight reaction and go silent. To start breaking out of it, you need to learn how to calm your nervous system down, to acknowledge that you are safe, to acknowledge that you can, in fact, have a disagreement with somebody and still be okay. When you can do that, that's when you can stop freezing in those moments and start to develop healthy communication skills. I love these questions, guys. We're just waiting for Emily to join in. She's here. Any questions that you guys have for Emily once she comes in, let us know. She's just joining right now. Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing well. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining
It's
us.
my pleasure. This is like the great way to like end my evening. Yeah, so I'm excited to get into the conversation.
Absolutely. And so I was just prepping everybody before you came in, telling them how you talk a lot about trauma bonds, narcissism, toxic relationships, kind of the
hmm
whole that. Why do you feel like those are such important topics to touch on?
Oh boy. That's because most people are in toxic relationships without even realizing or knowing it because that's what they grew up in. So it's so familiar to them. And I think, through my work on my page, I bring awareness to it. And then more and more people are waking up to, oh, like this is not okay. This is gaslighting. This is manipulation. I shouldn't feel this way in my relationship. But also not to, just point the finger at your partner or the other person, but to see, okay, why do I keep repeating this pattern? Because I do get a lot of people saying, I keep attracting these people, that must be all that's out there. It's like, no, because your pattern is staying the same. And I find that there is a lack of information out there that helps you to heal those wounds deeper so that you can actually break that cycle. And so that's what I thought was like really missing and needed, and to like offer that to more people.
Yeah, absolutely. So you I'm sure have seen also the classic, well, they were just a narcissist or they were just a manipulator or they were just a gaslighter. So even though a lot of people are in these toxic relationships, I also kind of feel like there's a huge bypassing of personal responsibility when it comes to the patterns and the toxicity. Do you see that?
Definitely. I think that, I don't like to ever blame the victim because, it's not their fault to some degree because these patterns that get them in the relationship, such as codependency, like, not having boundaries, people pleasing, over giving, it's coming from their programming in childhood that runs the show when they're triggered in those relationships. And so I like to look at it from that perspective. Like it's not your fault. You're not to blame for this, but because these are still your patterns that you picked up that are keeping you attracting these people, like you need to do the work to also heal it. And also, like, no one's perfect. Like there's a reason why these people, like, that you're pulled towards these people, and it can be very confronting and hard for people to look at, especially seeing that, okay, this could be part of like your shadow, so the parts that you denied in yourself. It takes a lot of courage, like I will say that, but it's worth it to really see what's within you and then end those kinds of relationships, because that is where your power is. There's no other way around it. It's, because it happens very subconsciously.
Yeah. And so curious, do you ever see toxic relationships that can transition into healthy relationships?
Yes, but it it depends. If the person has like a personality disorder, that doesn't just switch off and get fixed overnight. And I personally don't think that you should ever put your life on hold to wait for someone to change for you. And like that should be on their own time. If they're an abuser, no, sorry, like they're not changing. You need to safely get yourself out of that, like through the help of a therapist or a coach. But I think if someone is maybe like more avoidant, the other person's more anxious, but they're both able to acknowledge and see their faults, or I don't want to say faults, but just patterns within that situation. And they're like, yes, like I want to work through this, then it can become a healing place. But at the same time, you can't always heal in an environment that once made you sick. So it there really has to be a commitment on both ends, and there has to be a foundation of safety and trust. If you don't have that, it's hard to heal and grow, because that is the recipe for it.
Right. Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is that both partners have to be kind of conscious of their patterns and also be willing to create safety and trust and also be willing to
Yeah.
grow. And what I tell a lot of my clients too is like you've co-created this dynamic together. So the only way that you can have a healthy relationship is you have to co-create the healthy relationship.
Yes.
And so it's not even that the environment made them sick, it's that they were already a little sick and added to the environment and they co-created the fire together. And so we have a question here. Do you believe there are more toxic relationships today than say like 25 years ago? I don't
Um,
have statistics on that, but from your opinion, what do you think?
well, I think just with how society is, yes, there definitely is more of it, but I think what's happening is more people are becoming aware of it. There's more education out there of like, what's a narcissist, what are the signs of even emotional abuse, because that's a thing, people are able to spot physical abuse, but what about emotional abuse? When someone's criticizing you and you're walking on eggshells, people don't know that that's abuse. So I just think that, well, I think yes to both. Like, yes to there is more, and yes to there is more awareness around it now.
Wow. Okay. And so then adding on to that, um, can you define for us like a gaslighter and a narcissist in a relationship? Like just give it like a little, because someone asked kind of like what the differences are.
Like what the traits are. Like,
Yeah.
okay. So,
Gaslit. How do you know if you're in a toxic relationship?
yeah, okay. Well, because those are many questions, so I'll start with, how to know you're in a toxic relationship. And the first thing is like you do not feel safe. You feel like you need to hide parts of yourself. You feel like even if you try and bring something to their attention, like, hey, this bothers me, hey, this made me feel hurt, and they're not able to take accountability and validate your feelings, even if they didn't mean to do it, then there's going to be no growth happening and it's going to go around in circles. So it's going to become toxic because now you're not feeling heard or seen and they're not able to be self-aware enough or take that accountability to make the changes needed. So, and then there's like resentment building, anger, and yeah, that would be like the definition of a toxic relationship. And I'm not saying that it's always like intentionally done by both parties. I don't think anyone chooses to be toxic. It's just they don't have the resources usually, so they have to be willing to seek out those resources. And it takes time to heal. You know, like it takes sometimes years to heal. And so you can't expect someone to change overnight. You have to be willing to ask yourself, if they were to stay the same as they are right now, would I be okay with that? Because that is who they are, that's who they're presenting. Yeah, because someone doesn't just wake up and say, you know what, I'm a changed person, I'm never going back to my old patterns. It's gone, it's wiped away. No, it doesn't
Yeah.
happen, right?
Well, that's hard for a lot of people to accept in relationships where there maybe is abuse or something going on.
Mm-hmm.
We take it on as our own personal responsibility that if I'm just good enough,
Yeah.
they will change. I think that there's a lot of toxicity in social media that says, like, if he wanted to, he would, right? So it kind of does almost victim blame. Like, if you were good enough, you could make him love you better. Or
Right.
if you as a man were good enough, you could make her love you better. So we desperately try to earn the care that we deserve when we shouldn't have to earn basic safety and trust and love. And this
Mm-hmm.
is what a lot of us are confused about. Like you said, a lot of us are in toxic relationships we don't even realize because we grew up without a foundation of safety, trust, and love. Those are like the basic needs of a child, and many of us as children did not get that. Like,
Yes, yes. And because that's a good point, because that's what creates toxic relationships is those unmet needs. And because I have a lot of people asking me, like, why do I keep attracting these people? I didn't have any huge, big traumas. I wasn't abused. Yes, I hear that. But for a child to not have their emotional needs consistently responded and met creates attachment trauma. And then the attachment trauma, what it does is it causes you to prioritize attachment over your authenticity. So that's the whole self-abandoning cycle. So even if this person is toxic, I'm gonna just blind my eyes to it, not doing it consciously, but because that inner child, needs to keep that attachment. And that's where a lot of those patterns come in with the fantasy thinking and when it's not even them in reality or how they're showing up. It's based on that wiring. I need to keep the attachment at all costs. It's not safe to
yeah,
be me.
yeah. And I've even read studies about how when there's abuse in the relationship, it's even harder to leave. Like,
Oh,
it creates this extreme dopamine addiction effect where even they've
yes.
children being taken away from their abusive families and they will fight to go back because it's so addicting. So anybody in here who finds themselves kind of in a toxic or abusive relationship and has tried to leave, like, my heart goes out to you because you have to leave usually many times. I think statistically at least 12 times, but more than that usually, like physically, mentally, before you can actually detach because you're so addicted to that cycle.
Yeah. And that cycle will destroy you mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, everything, because that's what it does. It triggers up your deepest primal needs for attach, like to keep the attachment. But because they were also the source of your safety, and usually they love bomb you in the beginning. So your inner child's like, oh my God, those needs I've never had met, they they will save me from how I feel from my childhood. So of course, like now your brain has them attached with the cure. Like that's where your self-worth gets externalized. And so it keeps you in that vicious cycle. Because if you can't generate it internally, which is once again not your fault, then it's almost like you have like that's your only choice is to get it through this person. And and then the reason why we can't let go of that specific person is because they remind you of childhood. And secondly, the intermittent reinforcement from highs, love bombs, amazing experiences, lows, abuse, silent treatment, gaslighting, all those things in between. It brings your nervous system on a roller coaster that all you want to do is seek relief, but so they're the source of your pain and the relief from your pain. And that is like the biggest sign that you are trauma bonded.
Yes. And then all of a sudden, it's not even about the relationship anymore. It becomes about them being like them chasing you back, because usually what happens is you leave for an attempt to get their attention again, for just that one small attempt to get them to say they want you, or to get their, you know, it's that bid for attention. It's not even about being happy in the relationship anymore. It just becomes like
Yeah.
this desperate bid to just be seen.
Yes.
And then, like you said, it becomes so crazy and addicted in this cycle, you start to isolate yourself,
Mhm.
or they've isolated you. So then even if you go to your friends and family, which people usually do a million times, and they talk about the abuse, and then their friends and family hate that person, and they get sick of watching you go
Yeah.
back. So then just as a byproduct, that person really is your only person. So even though they are abusing you, you're like, fuck, dude, I would rather have this, because or else I have nothing.
That's a really good point you just made there. Yeah, a lot of people going through it are very much judged by the people around them. Their friends, their family abandon them because, yes, they're sick and tired of hearing about it because they don't understand how much it changes your brain and it creates this crazy addiction that's harder to break than, like cocaine and heroin. And then yeah, so they're already in this because they don't feel good enough and they have abandonment fears, and now add that on top of it and now there's even more pull towards this person. And yeah, it's like hearing those words, oh, like, why are you going back? They're already feeling so much shame. Like that's just
Yeah.
the worst thing you can tell someone. And yeah, like my heart breaks, when I work with clients and I just hear that they have no one now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard. So we're in this place, we're in this addiction. Let's try to flip the script a little bit for those people who, because some people are resonating, they're really resonating in the chat. And you've already pointed out the signs that you're in a trauma bond. If you feel like you're resonating with this, you're in the trauma bond.
Mhm.
You're in the abuse cycle. So what are some starting tips do you think that we can go with to start breaking the bond? How can we start breaking the bond?
Mhm. Well, the first step is like you have to find a way to go no contact. I usually suggest not going cold turkey right away because it can be like a big shock to your nervous system. But you want to bring down those exposures until you're able to get to a place of no contact. And then because this person became your main source of regulation, now you want to learn how to create that regulation and relief from within. And that comes through learning how to regulate your nervous system. And it's not here in your mind where that's going on, it's in your body. So you want to use body-based practices. So I teach things like EFT tapping, like self-havening, and it helps to deactivate that fight or flight response. And then you're able to calm it down on your own. So the dependency on them starts to go down and go down and go down. And that's what creates like a secure attachment within yourself. But it does not stop there. So it is a pretty complex process. That's just step one.
Right.
But step two is looking at what this person represents for you. They are just a symptom. If we stay stuck on, oh, well, like, why can't I get over this person? Why can't I let them go? It's not about them. The letting go has to happen internally, and it always goes back to childhood. And it doesn't have to be that your parent was the exact same. It could just be that you went through the same emotional experiences where you didn't feel seen and heard, you felt neglected, you didn't feel important, you didn't feel special. And so but you have to go back and heal the original wound to dissolve the trauma bond. Because now you no longer need to try and, treat the symptoms, not like try and not think about them. And the reason why like people get stuck with a bunch of rumination on like, why did this happen? Why did they do this to me? Did they ever love me? It's because when you leave, you end up with trauma from it. And the rumination is coming from all the activation that's left unresolved. So you have to also work on releasing the trauma, but it still comes back down to childhood because trauma is in the perception of what happened. They did this to me because I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable. So you change the perception from when it first started, the origin, and then it changes how you perceived that relationship. And so there's a more emotional charge around it, and there's no attachment. The attachment comes through that emotional charge. So, yeah, and yeah, so you need to do somatic therapy to get there. Your inner child is not something that you can just talk about or even talk to. Like through affirmations, it's not enough. These parts of you are very much repressed for a good reason because it's a lot of pain. But with trauma work, you don't go in all at once. You don't just dive into the deep end and feel all the feelings. You go in gradually. You learn how to process and feel your feelings in a contained way until eventually, when that wound is gone, there is nothing left to escape from.
Yeah.
And because you created an attachment internally with your inner child, they can now come to you for love, acceptance, approval, no longer thinking that they are my only source.
Yes. Wow, guys, mic drop. That was amazing. That you are trauma informed as an expert, because it's surprising that actually like a lot of people are not trauma informed. And so we are trying as a society to heal trauma with the mind, like you said, but it's actually trauma is stored in the body. Like the body keeps the score,
Yeah.
And so I love that you emphasize somatic work. It's the first thing that I do with the men that I have. I have a free master class on, self-regulation. And so anybody who is really resonating with Emily and is loving what she's saying, make sure to click that link that I have pinned to get a free ticket to the Year of the Man Summit 2024. It's next weekend. She's going to be speaking there on the panel. She's also going to be speaking for the men's group privately for us for the Better Man membership. So we thank her so much for that, because she's obviously a wealth of knowledge, fountain of knowledge. She knows her shit. You can obviously tell she just went step by step by step. So yeah, click the link, Year of the Man Summit 2024. Everything is online, guys. This is a free summit for men. Obviously, if you're a woman, you can go in there too. You can click the link, but I just want to plug that in there. But in addition to what Emily said, it takes a freaking tribe. Like, people can try to heal their trauma on their own, but I always say you can't solve what you can't see. If you would have been able to solve it by yourself, you have. But there's some things in our subconscious that we just don't understand. We can't see them, and you need an expert. You need a team to help you point those things out and then to keep you going when the going gets tough, because addictions are hard to break, whether they're to alcohol, to drugs, to porn, or to people. And so when you're rewiring, and you need a lot of validation, you need a lot of affirmation, you need a lot of external supplement while you learn how to do it for yourself, because
Yes.
if we had to give healthy love to ourselves first, we would have done it. So now we need to actually learn what the fuck healthy love is. Like, now you need to replace. You can't just get rid of an addiction and replace it with nothing. You need to replace it with something. And that's why so many people go back, because they try to quit cold turkey. They don't have a support system. They don't have a therapist. They don't have positive validation around them. They just are left with this empty hole. So then they go back, because that is the only form of validation that they were getting. It's the only form of love they were getting. So you need to do what Emily is saying, and you need to make sure you're surrounded by people who know what they're talking about, who want to support you, who want to see you win, who want to see you succeed, and who want to see you actually break the cycle, because you cannot do it alone.
I 100% agree. Yeah, because you need that healthy, safe place from someone else, which is called co-regulation, to be able to learn how to self-regulate. Um, and it's these are big traumas. These are really like deep abandonment fears that, yeah, I would never ever suggest trying to solve and be with on your own. You need that extra person in the room because what really kept the trauma there was a lack of empathetic witness, a safe person, a safe presence. So now, like when you're with your therapist, that's what they're able to give to you, and then eventually you're able to cultivate that in yourself. And yeah, I'd never suggest trying to figure it out on your own because you're going to be stuck in
It's
it.
you'll run yourself in circles and just you'll start to intellectualize all your problems without ever healing them. I'm sure you run into people who read a
Yes, that's a big one.
course. This is something I see with so many men. They can even better articulate their problems than a psychologist
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
because they read,
Yeah.
but they're like it's like the lights are on but nobody's home. The emptiness, they don't actually feel anything, they're not getting past it. And you know, guys, if you're finding yourself in this spot, like do not make yourself suffer any longer. Like, come to the summit next week, hire Emily, join the Better Man group, do what feels most aligned to you, but do not do it alone. It's like impossible to heal by yourself. We can't do it.
Yeah, we're also like wired to connect. Like we should have that support system. And you like you can't heal something if you don't fully understand it. And yes, you can go and read all the books, take all the courses, but that's logical. The problem is not logical. It's body based. It's trauma. It's stored in the body. And we can think that we're actually processing things, but we're actually intellectualizing it. That's why your therapist would be there to guide you and be like, okay, like, no, you're not actually processing. Like, let's try and take it more into the body. How are you feeling? So that you can actually let go of it. You can't let go of what you haven't yet felt.
Yes. Wow, I love that. And with that, I want to be very cognizant of your time, Emily, and cognizant of everyone's time here. Is there any last thing or bit of advice that you might give to men who are struggling, who kind of want to get started and explore their mental health or dive into it deeper?
Yes. Okay, I personally love working with men because like they just have the biggest hearts, and when they are vulnerable, it's just so beautiful to watch them like open up. And but I find that they are very much intellectualizers. So there's things stuck up in their mind, trying to figure out their issues. And so I think for them, they need a lot of that embodiment piece, but also writing down what might be the fear getting in their way of taking that next step, because it can be vulnerable. But once you like write down and expose those fears, then they're not as scary, and so then you're able to dive into like what you actually need for yourself. And like I always meet people exactly where they are, and I think that men just need to feel more safe, more understood, and just not judged for having feelings. Hey, we all have feelings.
Yes. Yes, I love that so much. Well, I appreciate your time. Guys, once again, you want to see more of Emily because she's freaking amazing. Click the link below for the Year of the Man Summit 2024 free online summit next weekend, and also you can join the Better Man membership where she's going to be speaking. I think in the month of March.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm really excited. Thank you so much, Emily. I love everything that you're doing, and we'll talk to you later. Okay, guys?
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys.